Okay, we are just about at the end where we are together going to create a full website template, or a web page template rather. But there's one more thing you need to know. And this one is more theoretical than anything at this point in time, but it is responsive design. Now, responsive design really just means you have a website that's, I don't know, maybe this wide, and someone says, oh, I'm gonna look this up on my phone. So they grab their phone, they look it up, and they go, oh, well, I have a website that's this big, but the phone is only this wide. So how are we going to handle that? Responsive design basically says, well, we're going to take this website and we're going to shrink it down. And if there are multiple columns, we're going to move them down below. Now, a lot of this has to do with CSS and does not have to do with HTML, although there is one component that is required in HTML. We need to tell the page that this is responsive. If you've been following along, whenever I type in, and you can just see behind me here, when I type in HTML5 colon, or no, the other way around, when I type in HTML:5 rather, and hit tab, it gives me a bunch of stuff. And some of that stuff, let's see if I can make this smaller. Let's hide the Explorer. It gives us a meta element. Name of viewport content is width is equal to device width. So whatever that device width is considered 100%, and its initial scale is 1, so 100%. And then we say the HTTP equiv, we want that to be equivalent on Edge. So honestly, we don't need to really know what that second one is too much, but it is a common thing that we add in there. But the one we want to look at here is width, device width, initial scale, and so on. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to get out of the way and we're going to look at my screen together. So here is our meta tag, and this one is what we say to the browser, make this responsive. Now, this is actually not the greatest example because we only have one element in here called audio. So what I'm going to do is create a new file, call it responsive design.html, HTML5, bam, responsive, nope, really messing this up here, responsive design. It's funny how you don't really make too many typos until someone's watching. Okay, so let's say we have a div in here and we are going to add style, border, 1 pixel solid red, and we're just gonna say stuff. Open up Firefox and let's just open up responsive design. And okay, so we have an element in here, a block element, so it takes up 100% of its width, its allowable width. And so far our page is not responsive. Now here's a little trick, a pro tip. If you right click and go to inspect element, you will always have a cool little feature. It'll look something like this. I think on Chrome it's actually on the other side, but basically you have a responsive design mode. In fact, actually that's what it's called here, responsive design mode. It's getting cut off from my editing parameters here, or my recording parameters here, but it says responsive design mode. Now I click that and I can see that there's a little border around here, and I can change the width of my page. So when I change this to 800 pixels, what is my page going to look like? Okay, not bad. A better example is going to be, what if we added lorem ipsum in here? Lorem, and let's do 100. Okay, so we've got, you know, a few lines in here. What is that? 7-ish lines. Let's see what happens when we change that width to 400. Okay, well, this is getting to be a smaller device now. In fact, we can actually change it. Let's say we want to use a Galaxy S9 or S9 Plus. Well, that has a width of 360 pixels. And so we have to cram all of our stuff into a much smaller space. What if I wanted to use an iPhone 6, 7, or 8? Well, that one has a width of 375. Now, generally speaking, and you don't need to know about all this stuff right now, it's just sort of good to know that it's coming up in the future. But generally speaking, you want to support anything that's 320 or higher. Anything lower than 320, just ignore. But 320 is sort of the lowest that you want to support, and it's good to support anything above that. So we can't really get to anything too much bigger, and there are just too many products out there for this to be a list. You can edit your list if you want to, but let's say I am on a big screen. So I am on my MacBook Pro right now, and my MacBook Pro has a width of, I don't know, 2560. So you can see now that this is really wide and it only has 2 lines of text. Now, text is the most basic way of looking at responsive design. It's not technically super responsive because proper responsive design. We'll say on a small device, we're actually going to hide, we're going to move around, we're going to do different things, we're going to style things differently. And that's really all there is to it. So from here on forward, we should always, as a minimum, add this particular line, and this one doesn't hurt to have as well. If you do that, then moving forward, all of your websites will technically be proper responsive. Now, if you don't add this, just because we're writing HTML, you probably won't see too much of a difference. But when you get into CSS, which is what you should be learning after HTML, when you get into CSS, this is going to make the world of a difference. So there's no task for this video. I just wanted to tell you about responsive design and give you a very basic understanding of how it works and sort of why we do it. Again, the reason is just because we have so many devices out there. We've got hundreds, if not thousands of different devices with different widths. People are using their browsers at different widths. You never know, and we have to sort of take into account a lot of that. 99.9% of that work is all done through CSS. Occasionally it's done with JavaScript, but CSS can handle it these days. Really, we don't have to do too much with HTML. But as a front-end developer, or as a future back-end developer, you need to know that responsive design rules the world. Without it, you are going to be making desktop sites, people will load it up on their phone, and it's not going to look very nice for them. They're going to be quite disappointed. And in fact, if your site is not responsive, Google will actually dock points from your website, so you will rank worse if your site is not responsive. And right now, all you need to know is just add this line.